My name was Billy Fury. I used to really like music. Even when I was at school, I used to like Frankie Lane, Johnny Ray, a lot of the country and western artists as well, which was Hank Williams. I used to like Tennessee Ernie Ford as well, Billy Eckstine, I think. So I always did like music. Anyway, when I went on the tugboat, skiffle was just about coming out. And I think the main force in this was a guy called Lonnie Donegan. Anyway, I learnt a few Lonnie Donegan numbers, and we used to play these on board the tug when we had nothing to do, sort of in between tides or something. The skipper of the tug played the ukulele. I think the chief engineer played a bass made out of an oil drum and a broomstick, which wasn't an original idea, but still. And then someone played spoons of all things, which I really hated the sound of, but we had to keep them in the band as well. I played guitar, and there was another guitar as well. When I say I played guitar, I didn't really play it very well. I just knew about 3 chords. I think it was C, F, and G. We used to work out these various little songs, and after a while I began to work out my own songs on these 3 chords. I think I wrote Maybe Tomorrow, and then I wrote Margot, and I think Colette, and various other little simple ditties. Anyway, we used to sometimes sing to the passengers on the passenger liners whilst we were tied up in, say, the lock. That's the thing which goes up and down to reach the level of the River Mersey. Shortly afterwards, I was sacked from the tugboats, and I had a lot of difficulty in getting another job, as I'd been working with my hands and not with my brain. We went to see a film which had just come out. I think it was called The Girl Can't Help It, with Little Richard and Eddie Cochran, etc., Gene Vincent, of course. Anyway, this was a really great movie, and I went down with a gang of lads, if you like, who I was knocking around with then. We used to call them teams in Liverpool. That's a team from so-and-so area, and a team from the Dingle, and a team from Garston. I went down with my particular team, or the one I was in, and we were watching The Girl Can't Help It. Eddie Cochran came on to the screen, and a few of the fellas said, "Wow, you really look like Eddie Cochran." So I was rather flattered, as I liked the kind of things that Eddie Cochran was doing. It was 20 Flight Rock, I think, then. So off I went home, started to grow sideboards, etc., and do my hair like Eddie Cochran. At the same time, I was also influenced by a guy called James Dean and, of course, Elvis Presley. Then a rock and roll show came to Birkenhead. That was the other side of the Mersey, which was headed by Marty Wilde. Now, I thought that Marty Wilde was a pretty good English rock and roll singer, and I decided to go across and try to sell some of these songs I'd been writing to him. Anyway, I went round to the stage door, and there wasn't even a stage doorman, so I walked in, guitar in hand, and saw a very important-looking man coming along the corridor. I think it was evening dress and very black hair. Anyway, he said, what was I doing there? And I said I was looking for Marty Wilde. He asked my reason. I said, well, I have some songs which he might be interested in recording. So he turned out to be Larry Parnes, and I was taken to Marty Wilde's dressing room, where I played these songs over to Marty. So Marty looked at Larry and said, I think that Billy should do these songs himself. So the very same night, a new comedian was starting, and he was comparing the show. His name was Jimmy Tarbuck, and still is. So it was all arranged that Jimmy would go on and say, we have a local lad here who is going to sing a couple of his own songs for you. Let's give him a big hand. So when it came to this point, I really was suffering from stage fright, if you like, very bad nerves. And I decided at the last moment not to go through the curtains. Well, I was pushed through the curtains eventually by Larry Parnes and some stagehands, and suddenly I was in this great big light with the microphone standing in front of me. I was really nervous, and as I started to sing, I was so nervous that my knees were shaking, and everyone thought that wow, who's this guy with the shaking knees? And anyway, it went down very well. Meanwhile, Larry Pond was sitting in the audience with a big fat cigar, and later on asked me if I'd like to join the show, rehearse with one of the bands, and carry on with the tour. So I was very thrilled about this, went home, told my folks about it, and they said, okay, if that's what you want to do, that's all right with us, and packed my bags, or should I say bag, and made for town the next morning, where I was supposed to meet a coach, which was touring the country. When I got there, the coach wasn't there, and I thought it had been one great big joke, but I walked around the block and I was in the wrong street. And so that's the way I started anyway, straight into touring. And my name was still Ronnie Wycherley, and I was thinking it's not really a good name to use for on stage. I had one thought up, which was Steen Wade, at Stean Wade. That must have come from the country and western days when I liked country and western music. Anyway, I had a call from London, and I spoke to Larry Pond's office, and they said that when I was to get back to London, I had an interview with the Daily Mirror. I think I had my first record out called Maybe Tomorrow. So before going to see the people at the Daily Mirror, Larry was going to give me a little chat on what to expect, what kind of questions, etc., which really did help. Then he said, what do you think about, excuse me, what do you think about having a stage name? So I said, well, I feel fine about it. I'd like to change it anyway. So I said, what do you think about Billy Fury? Well, I like Billy because I have an Uncle Billy, and I always wanted to be called Billy, but I wasn't really too keen on the Fury. So we tossed a coin on it, and I won the toss, and thought that, well, the next day there's going to be a picture of me in the Daily Mirror, and it's going to say Steen Wade. So next day there was a bang, bang, bang on my flat door, and I opened it. One of my friends was there with a copy of the Daily Mirror, and there he had Billy Fury. So that's how the Billy Fury bit came. I think Larry did make an ideal manager for myself and quite a number of other people. And the reason why I think he did it was because he had an eye then on the present, and also an eye into the future. Before any young rock and roll singers, some people call them performers, came along, the people who were singing were all, well, like Frankie Lane, etc. They were all well in their 20s or 30s. And with the Tommy Steele coming on the scene and being in his teens, and then a lot of people as well, Marty Wilde, Cliff Richard, I think that Larry had was one of the first to have an eye in the future, to see that youngsters could make it, and that youngsters wanted to listen to youngsters and not people who were older than themselves and, well, not in their, well, out of their generation, if you like. So in this way I think Larry was very good. He also was very good with press, and I think that some of today's press lines and stunts, if you like, because there still are a hell of a lot, I run on the old lines, and those original ones were Larry Pond's and some of the older PR men as well. Basically, I'm a very, very shy person, and I think it was just another way of not being shy. Whenever I had to speak, I hated talking to anyone because I was just even too shy to speak, believe it or not. Once I was singing, I was fine. And I think with being so retiring, it gave me a way of letting off steam, was to really lay it on a bit heavily, if you like. And when I was younger, I did do this when I was working, and I enjoyed it as well. A new style of clothes came out, which was either a battle jacket or a fingertip jacket and the drainpipe trousers. Well, naturally, like a lot of other fathers, my mind said that I wasn't to wear them, and if I was found wearing them, he'd give me a clip over the ear or whatever. So, to avoid any kind of trouble in the home, I hid my drainpipe trousers in the outside loo, which was down the bottom of the yard. Then when I was going out at night time, I'd say, "Okay, Dad, see you later on. I won't be too late," and go out in my flappy trousers, nip round the entry, that's what they were called, entries or jiggers, climb over the wall into the yard, and just change into my drainpipe trousers so I could go round in the style that everyone else was going around in. Halfway to Paradise, it wasn't the largest selling record. I think it's the most popular now. If I do Cabaret, for instance, that really gets a great hand of applause as soon as the bolero beat starts. I met an old friend of mine, Keith Moon, and Keith said that they might be making a film soon, and he was arranging all the musicians for the sessions. I wasn't really keen to do any kind of a film, and fortunately I don't do any acting in That'll Be the Day, just singing. But the most drawing thing, I think, was that I would be doing a session with people like, well, Keith himself on the drums, Jack Bruce from the Cream playing bass, and Ronnie Wood on guitar from the Faces, John Hawkins, a sort of musician's musician, on piano, and Graham Bond on sax and organ. And it seemed like it would be a lot of fun, which it really was. And the filming itself was also really great fun, with all these guys down on the set, and Ringo himself, who incidentally I went to school with at one time. I think I was about 10 then. I think he was about the same age. Anyway, making it was a really great deal of fun. The best fun I've had for about 4 or 5 years.